All right, guys, thank you everybody for joining us today. For those of you who I have not met, my name is Kate Guillen. I am the founder of Simplicity Ops. I am joined by my friend and right-hand woman, Katherine. Katherine, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Katherine, coming out of, again, lovely Phoenix, Arizona. I am the manager of implementation and strategy. So I get to deal with all of our clients, all the questions, all the struggles. I hear it all the time. So always happy to help.
We are very lucky to have Katherine on our team. You might recognize her. She's kind of Redtail famous. She was the manager of the Redtail training team for years and is now, our technical expert for all things Redtail here at Simplicity Ops. So today is going to be kind of a casual conversation. Some of you have already submitted some really great questions that we're going to work through today, explained, ideology and logic for how to implement Redtail as the operational hub of your business, answer some of your questions. Like Katherine said, if you do have questions as we're working through this, please drop them in the Q&A. This is recorded. We will send out the recording later on today or sometime this week. If you have to drop off early or want to share with anybody on your team, all of the resources that we cover today will be available. But again, this is a casual conversation. So if y'all have questions, just, let us know. But I'll turn it over to you, KB. She's going to MC this thing today and kind of work through some of the questions y'all have submitted.
Yeah. So one of the first questions here, it's a lengthier one, so bear with me, everyone, but it's a very good question. Which functions of Redtail do you think are critical? If you were to talk with an advisor about how they should use Redtail the most efficiency and effectively, what parts would you say for sure to be utilizing? So things like workflows, opportunities, calendars, tasks. What's our take on it?
Love this question. Let's here's Simplicity Ops. We believe that a financial advisor's number one responsibility is client service. And we have learned that the best tool to use to deliver an amazing client service experience is your client relationship management software. All right. So you've heard me say that like your CRM should literally be the operational hub of your business. And this image kind of brings to life that hub idea. So we know that in order to really optimize this tool, deliver an amazing client service experience, and be super, super efficient, you should be using Redtail for all these things here: your contacts, your tasks, your calendar, your pipeline, client accounts. Because by centralizing all of this, not only are you able to cut down on a lot of the unnecessary places that you're currently going to manage these things, but your reporting metrics are even more robust because everything lives in a single place. And so we'll dive into some of these a little bit deeper, but when you think about Redtail as a contact management system, this is beyond just like how our contacts organize. It's building out your family tree and your professional network and being able to relate to your contacts on a personal level. Your tasks, okay, living in Redtail. Katherine will show you an example in a second, but being able to build out a historical timeline of everything that has transpired in your client relationships, because you can see the calendar with phone calls and appointments. You can see open action items and check deposits and Benny changes, all right? And so bringing this to life, I want to show you what the hub looks like. And so what Katherine has up here is a couple of tabs opened in Redtail. So in the morning when you log in, I can see in one place my calendar. I can see my tasks from my today page. I can see all of my open workflows, which tell me how to execute these various service requests. I can see my contacts, all right? And I can see on Maggie's page here, the name of her family, where does she work, all of her contact information. I can see notes, I can see activities, I can see, what in the world is going on for this gal. And then from a business management standpoint, I can also see open opportunities, new revenue opportunities for my firm. I can see, who's in the pipeline, where are they at in the process, the dollar amount of the opportunity, who brought in the business. Again, so that all of these metrics are now reportable in one single solution, one single system. All right. Does anybody have questions as it relates to this hub idea?
Nothing.
Okay, we can keep rolling, KB, and we can answer some of these other more technical questions.
The one thing I want to drill in here too, if you don't mind, is just think of these as like your starting points. Within each one of these sections, there's going to almost be like little cheat sheets to make it even easier on yourselves. So like think about with tasks, you have your workflows, you also have activity templates. Those are going to be key for that efficiency that we had been asked about for that question. Calendar, again, making sure that everyone is really using it and not having two people on the Redtail calendar, two people over on Outlook, two people on Google. That serves no purpose. So it's really getting that buy-in, but then it's also using those templates within the system as well. So I'm going to push forward to this though, because Kate, you and I both know this is the zoomed out better version to explain it.
Yeah. And so we've had some questions around implementation, like how do you actually build out, how do you actually optimize Redtail? And so I know everybody's really excited about workflows and automations and, advisor tech, but none of those things are effective if you haven't built like the foundation and the framework to support them first. And so these are like the 5 phases for building out Redtail. It starts with data organization, because Redtail in its most simplest form is a database. In order for you to get the adoption Catherine's talking about, get the buy-in that you need to make this, a well-oiled machine, the data needs to be clean, consistent, and trustworthy. And so you start by figuring out how your database should be organized. Then building out your hub, that image that I just showed you, getting everybody using the system consistently, like she's talking about, for your calendar, for your tasks, for your sales pipeline. Then getting clear on your service model and delivery so that we know, like, who do we serve? What are the services we provide? How frequently are we meeting with people? So that we can build out a proactive system in Redtail to deliver on that service experience. And then workflows and automations are how you deliver those services at scale. All right. And once you've kind of built out Redtail, you're going to find out that there are still ongoing friction points because your CRM can't be all the things. So even once you've like totally optimized this tool, you're going to find, oh, note taking's a pain in the butt. Data gathering's a pain in the butt. Calendaring sucks. Like, how can we use some available advisor technology to further elevate the client experience and further elevate, the Redtail's users experience? And so this is the 5 steps to build out this tool. And we'll dig into these a little bit deeper here, but I want to emphasize that this does not work if you do it in reverse. It does not work if you do this piecemeal. You're never going to get, the streamlined, consistent users experience and client experience if you don't do it in this order. All right. And so let's start, Catherine, and just talk about like how the database should be organized as an example. And yes, we'll be sharing all of these, this resource document with everybody after this call today. So if you think about Redtail as a database, the data needs to be well structured to support all of these other systems that we're going to build. So at the highest level, we need to have a clean list of statuses. You need to keep this list to 12 statuses or less. Okay. The status from a reporting standpoint allows you to cast the largest net and say, hey, Catherine, get me a list of just my clients or my prospects or my centers of influence. Okay. So Catherine's able to now run a report at the highest level and capture all clients. We can further filter down these reports by giving them a category, and a category explains the type of contact within their status. Okay, gives them a rank or like further classifies them. And so here's where you can get, a little bit more creative and explain what type of clients that you have, what types of prospects do you have, what types of centers of influence that you have, so that I can ask Catherine, hey, I've got a client looking for an attorney. Can you get me a list of all of our COIs that are attorneys so that I can give them a couple of recommendations to go vet? All right. And so here's an example of a well-structured database. That is the, first step in building out this process. And once you know how the database is going to be organized, you can start to train and get the rest of the team using the system for contacts, tasks, or sales pipeline, everything else that we just talked about. And the whole purpose of this is we're building up to creating a proactive client service experience, using workflows to deliver them at scale, and implementing some advisor tech. So I know, Catherine, you had a question about client servicing and scheduling, right?
Yes. Yeah, so it's a little bit lengthier here. So client scheduling as a whole, but there's one that's a rather large database here. Interested in understanding how others are really using Redtail to track and manage the client scheduling. individual tasks, tag groups, next review day, what's kind of the best method to this one? I think we kind of have like two concepts for this one. But you and I both know it starts off with a service level first, specifically
Yes.
this second row right here. If you don't know how many meetings you ultimately need to schedule, it doesn't matter how efficient you have when it comes to tags or keys or even using that client review, because you're not controlling your scheduling. So this is one I'm going to shamelessly plug in here. Establish what kind of service you are providing, how many meetings you're having based on the tier, or if it's across the board the same. Not my 2 cents. I like to make sure we give that white glove to our top tier clients, but set the standard. That's the first step. And
Right.
then Redtail comes in.
Exactly. And so when we go through it, it's like the exercise Katherine and I have is figuring out who it is that you serve, the services you provide, the frequency. All right. Because like she's saying, by segmenting your book, you can scale down the service experience and figure out exactly how many meeting slots do you need to have available each week, each month to deliver on this. And then we integrate a piece of online, calendar software. G-Reminders is our recommendation to create a structured calendar to be able to deliver on this, right? If we're going to meet with people X amount of times a year, let's just say, we meet with our top tier clients twice a year. We have a keyword for each month of the year. Am I explaining this right, Katherine?
Well, I'm going to let you roll with it, and then I'll give I'm going to shamelessly plug in G-Reminders again, but I just love the tool so much. So I'm going to go with the normal standard, and then I'll pop in that little like extra ta-da that could happen.
Correct. So if you're not using G-Reminders, and then I'll let Katherine explain if you are using G-Reminders, we have a keyword for all 12 months of the year. Based on the contact segment within your book of business is going to indicate how many keywords they are in. So our top tier clients are going to be in 2. Let's say they're in the January and the June keyword. Each month, we're going to run a report to say, give me a list of everybody that's in my June keyword. All right. And I'm now able to take that June keyword, send a broadcast email utilizing an email template that says, hey, Bob and Gina, it's that time of year again. We'd love to have you in to continue the financial planning process. Looking forward to, or here's the link to our calendar. We put in our G-Reminders calendar link or Calendly or whatever you're using as your online calendar tool. And broadcast email that out to all, 30 people in that keyword. So you can see in terms of like efficiency, being able to send the email one time to 30 people instead of 30 individual emails is an enormous time saver. Being able to set a follow-up activity to confirm that meetings are scheduled. You can do that in bulk. All right. And so that's the beauty of clearly defining a service model, building out a system in Redtail with keywords, email templates, note templates, workflow templates to deliver on that experience. And then taking advantage of, some additional advisor tech to like further the efficiency with things like G-Reminders. And I'll let Katherine kind of get into the technicalities of G-Reminders because they've taken this to the next level. So KB, I'll let you fill them in on that.
They definitely have. So the only change just from this page alone is that instead of using keywords, we'd actually use tag groups. And it's really because stripping it back, it's a question we get normally. So I'm just going to kind of answer it out of the gate. Keywords is more internal usage with Redtail. Tag groups is the fraternal twin that's more of external usage. So it talks well with marketing platforms and in this case, G-Reminders. So what the big picture of this would look like, I would have a very similar concept, review whatever month they're supposed to be in the tag group. What ends up happening on the G-Reminder side is they have something called a bulk send function. That's basically a fancy way to say that it'll set up like this whole little, what do I want it to do? I want it to read my tag groups, and then it will actually reach out to schedule with my link automatically for me. So I don't have to do the broadcast email bulk send, but more importantly, I also don't have to add the follow-up because I can also set that parameter as well. So if I don't have someone schedule immediately, maybe they're out of town, I have them send a reminder 3 days later, they still haven't scheduled, I have it follow up a week later, it'll do that follow-up for us. So we actually don't have to do a lot of manual work anymore, which makes me sound incredibly lazy, but it's that efficiency that we're always seeking. So it takes out literally this advanced search page, the broadcast email, the follow-up activity, all of that little extra stuff that we were just showing. You don't have to do that anymore if you use that G reminder. So G reminders is stepping up in its game. It already had that really great function of actually talking to the Redtail calendar. Now it's helping with that client scheduling on top of using, again, that availability of the calendar. So it's very slick. I'm very intrigued to see where they're going to keep going and what responses we'll have from maybe some of the competitors in the industry. But right now it is chef kiss. It is very beautiful.
Yeah, they're incredibly innovative. We appreciate the work that they're doing. So thank you for Karen asked why G reminders over Calendly, because it directly integrates with Redtail. Calendly, you're still having to use the Outlook middleman. G reminders is incredibly innovative. It fires off workflows, it creates contacts, it directly integrates with the system. G reminders over Calendly all day long.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just really that communication that has in it. I know, at least for years, that's all I kept hearing about. It's like, how do we get it to talk directly to to the Redtail calendar? How do I get it to launch workflows? And it takes that extra step out. I am going to shamelessly plug in here because we did bring up that there's nothing necessarily wrong with Calendly itself. It's just the connection to Redtail that we don't love. So I am going to actually answer Tim's question here really fast about Retriever Cloud and Sync Suite. Kate already knows whenever I hear anything about that, my blood pressure automatically goes up. So I'm gonna try to keep this as like PC as possible. Retriever Cloud is kind of the old school mentality behind it. I love the concept. It does create that like secondary calendar, which I don't love, within either Outlook or Google. Sounds like Outlook in your case here. And I'm sure it's been working fine, not fantastic, not horrible, just fine. Sync Suite on paper has everything that I'm sure you're looking for. It had everything I was looking for. Unfortunately, it runs into quite a bit of issues. They are currently basically rebuilding the actual foundation that the Sync Suite, I'm going to call it an integration, sits on. So if you were to turn it on today, you do run a very, very high risk of getting duplicate activities on your calendar. So like if you have a meeting, or actually I'll even take this like this webinar, if you had this blocked on your Outlook calendar, it would talk to Redtail. You just might see that exact activity 9 to 60, and that is 60 times. And it makes it really impossible to read the calendar. So last I heard, it is something that Q4, at least the start of it, is going to get that release, that updated version. So I know it's probably not the answer you'd like to hear. I would hold off just a little bit longer until we get that update. And honestly, if you're part of our free community, I'll give my like 2 cents once I find out like, yes, this really is working. So I would just status quo for now. Again, probably not the answer you're looking for, but I would just stick with it for the moment. All right, I'm going to get off my Sync Suite tangent. We'll get back to our normally scheduled program.
Let's talk about workflows. There were a lot of questions about workflows. And so I think the point that I want to make here is like, you have to work up to workflows. They're not effective if you haven't built the foundation and the frame to support, this advanced functionality. And so when you think about a workflow is anything that is done more than 3 times that has more than 3 steps. Okay, of course, there's things that aren't going to follow that perfectly, but that has been like a common denominator amongst all of these workflows. And so we like to think about workflows as a way to reduce redundancy, to reduce reinventing the wheel, to eliminate drop balls, and just standardize the heck out of all the repeatable things that you do, starting with your prospecting and new client onboarding journey. All right, this is a highly repeatable process that we want to standardize so that we're not reinventing the wheel every single time we meet a lead, so that it's a consistent experience, both internally for our team and also externally for our clients. That just builds confidence all the way around. It's also an opportunity for you to delegate and rest assured that this process is going to be delivered as well by another team member as it was previously delivered by you. And so think through like, what does your new prospect journey look like? And I'm going to do another shameless G reminders plug here. You're going to want to have an individual workflow for each different type of meeting that you have for a couple of reasons. One long onboarding workflow, one long prospecting workflow does not work. We've tried it numerous times. It does not work. It is too convoluted. There are too many different outcomes and if this, then that. It just is a freaking headache. So do yourself a favor and chop it up into individual bite-sized meeting workflows. So, I call Katherine and I say, hey, Katherine, I've heard really great things about your team. I'd love to schedule some time with your advisors. We schedule an introductory call, a qualifying phone call, starts the process, okay? After that conversation, we determine, are they a good fit? Are they not a good fit? Then we schedule the next meeting in the sequence, our discovery meeting, okay? You guys can see the flow here. Then they sign paperwork, and there's all the behind the scenes things that we do, submitting it to the custodian, saving it to the server, processing the transfer. You guys get what I'm getting at here. But not only do you want to break this flow up into individual meetings for organizational sake, you also can take advantage and capitalize on G reminders that has individual meeting links for each one of these meetings, so that when Katherine sends me that link for an intro call, I can schedule online, or she schedules on my behalf or whatever. G reminders automatically pushes it to the Redtail calendar. It creates a new contact, or it links the existing contact. It links Katherine as the attendee, and it fires off the corresponding introductory call workflow. Okay, then we go and into the discovery meeting. We send the calendar link, the client picks a time, it flows through to the Redtail calendar, it links the contact record, it fires off the corresponding workflow that says, hey, a week before we need to do this, day of we need to do this, post meeting we need to do this. There's just such fluidity because the consistency between Redtail and what's in G reminders means that anytime, whatever's scheduled in G reminders, the meeting that's scheduled in G reminders knows the corresponding meeting in Redtail that automatically launches the workflow that tells the team how to execute that meeting. Okay, it is literally that. She said chef's kiss. I call it butter. It is literally that smooth.
And I will say we'll get this in the past too, where it's like, hey, I've used Calendly connected to Zapier or Zapier, depending on how you want to pronounce that. I feel like I butchered every time. So however you call it. The thing with that one is because it's still an outside bridge that's not directly built on one platform, you're involving technically 3 companies at that time.
Right.
So you're running that higher risk of it breaking. So that's like another reason where it's like, if I can limit, I know we've talked about in the past, like having all of these things in our tech stack, but at some point you are going to have to ask yourself, am I having too many? Can one particular thing do many things? And that's where this does come in, and it can do many things in this case. And I know we're preaching to the choir here. We use it ourselves. Literally, anytime there's a new onboarding, it basically passes off from Kate's hands to mine. It all goes through that in the same process that our clients would use it in this case.
I appreciate that. And so when you're thinking about workflows, the prospecting is where we usually start, because it's something that generally needs to be streamlined. It's usually pretty herky-jerky and haphazard. Once we've got that dialed in, take a look at all of the other things that you and your team are doing more than 3 times. It has more than 3 steps. Generally, it looks something like this. Opening new accounts, moving money, changing addresses, someone passes away, we need to change a Benny, we need deposit checks, all right? In an effort to not reinvent the wheel every single time you go to do one of these things, take the time and document a standard operating procedure in a workflow format and store it in your CRM. And what this literally looks like is jotting down the steps and the tasks. And I will tell you, the most important part of this is literally jotting it down, the whiteboarding or like the rough drafting process that I would, write out on a Word doc or Workflowy or whatever, to get clear on what are the steps and what are the tasks. The steps follow a chronological order. First, you need to do this. Second, you need to do this. Third, you need to do this. The tasks can be done in any order, okay? And so the tasks live within the step. So you can't move on to the next step until all the tasks are complete, but they can be done in any order. So if it's like, we're preparing for a meeting and I need to review the statements, put together the agenda, Katherine needs to prepare the conference room, we can be working on these things simultaneously, but we can't move on into the next step until we both completed our tasks as they relate to that meeting. Okay,
Which
so go ahead, Katie.
I'm going to say this is actually going to answer. Doris had just popped in. Why is a workflow
Love it.
better than an activity template that has the steps in it? It's that right there. When you
Because it
have
follows the chronological timeline.
exactly, and
An
I don't know about
activity
anyone
template.
else. Yep, I'm like, hit it. I know you're going the same thought I am. Go for it.
So when you think about a workflow versus an activity template, I said anything that's done more than 3 times, it has more than 3 steps. An activity template would be great for things that aren't that. Okay, so we use activities in combination with workflows because as it sits right now, there's not a better way to do it in Redtail. And we template the heck out of our activities. And we have activity templates for all of these things. So when I have a review meeting with a client, and as a result of that conversation, I need to update a Benny, I put in an activity for Katherine using an activity template that says Benny change. And in the description of that activity template, it says all of the things that Katherine needs from me, the advisor, to prepare the, to execute the Benny change. And so I put in the activity using a template for Katherine. I say, who is the Benny that needs to be updated? What account is it? What percentage? All the information that she needs. I task it over to her. Katherine gets it. The activity then is the call to action. Katherine, you need to change the Benny. We have it linked to an automation that I'll get into in just one second that says, because you added an activity and the category is Benny change, it's automatically going to launch the Benny change workflow, which tells Katherine how to execute the Benny change request. So the activity is just the call to action. KB, change the Benny. How does she actually do it? What is the paperwork? She needs to send it out. She needs to make sure she gets it back. She needs to save it to the server, submit it to the custodian, make sure the custodian actually did what they said they were going to do, and email the client to close the loop and let the client know that we, did whatever, Benny change that needed to be done using an activity template. That is the workflow. Those are the steps and the tasks that tell Katherine how to execute the Benny change based on our internal operational standard and the custodial requirements. So we use the two in combination with one another. That was my long-winded explanation of activities versus workflows.
The one last thing I'm going to stress on it is that when you come with the activities and there's multiple people involved with it, you're doing one of two things. You're either attaching multiple users on one activity, in which case you have to know as the user that's getting it signed that you are basically domino number one. That's not realistic. The second would be you're basically updating who it's assigned to every single time you're done with something. Okay, I'm done with it. I'm going to change it to Allie. Allie, save activity. Oh, great. Allie does it, comes back to me. But the thing with that one is there's no real timestamp that shows like everything that's actually been done. So you're forcing yourself to do extra work by saving it in that description with manually date, time, and user stamping it or linking it as a note and creating a long history that would have all been prevented if it was a workflow to begin with. So just a couple other things.
That's huge. And the other thing that you have to do, Katherine, not only do I have to like manually make it pass hands, but I also have to like kick the can down the road. So like if the like I literally if the activity shows up today and I don't have the paperwork back, I have to make the note that the paperwork didn't come back, then I have to kick it out a couple of days. Where the workflow can follow that flow for you. So you're not kicking the can. I'm not tasking it off to Katherine. The workflow literally makes it pass hands and follow a chronological timeline. I think that's the activity templates are stagnant. The workflow is fluid. I think is the biggest differentiator between the two.
And then on kind of a similar note here, we got a question from Tim. So he's been using Redtail for over 10 years. They've never been able to get workflows to run smoothly across the firm. They're just clunky. Any recommendations on how to overcome this issue? I'll let you start first, and then I've got some tips too. If you want me to start.
We have everybody knows this saying, but we have an internal saying here at Simplicity Ops. Literally the name of our business is Simplicity. So we like to KISS, keep it simple, silly, okay? Because simple systems get adoption, simple systems scale. Complexity does none of that. So as much as you can, keep them absolutely as simple as possible as just literally the framework for execution. That's number one. Number two is involve your team in the building and development of these workflows so people feel a sense of ownership. Number 3, use automations. Because when the advisor says, I'm never going to use workflows, it's just a whole nother click. By using an automation, so by putting in that activity template, Benny change, it automatically fires off the workflow. Now the advisor has no argument. There's no extra clicks. It's literally automated. By having those tabs open, like Katherine showed at the beginning of this, they now have easy access in a single place to their calendar, their tasks, their workflows, right? That's why we stress having your workflow tab open here so that they can work through in chronological order the things that need to be done. And honestly, I think the most important part is getting top-down support. Like the people, the leadership need to be on board. The leadership team need to see the value in this. And generally, the way you get buy-in is by making the argument or the sales pitch to them in a way that directly benefits them. And generally, people are concerned with, having more time or more money. And so if you're getting a hard time with adoption, you should speak to them in a way that speaks to one of those two things and explain to them how it's going to save them time or how it's going to make or save them more money. And then you shouldn't have any problem getting buy-in and getting people to adopt them as long as the system is simple and easily understood.
Said it perfectly here. The only other thing is to test it and test it and test it. I will stress this, that everyone always thinks like the first go around, they've got this perfect workflow built out, and then they go and use it and they go, this is so far off, it's not even funny. That's normal. You're going to build it and you're going to make those changes and tweaks to them. But the biggest thing is that you make sure it actually flows and you're not assuming it flows. Because again,
I love that you brought that up, Katherine, because I think having clear expectations is really important, Tim, because your CRM is going to be a living, breathing thing forever. And so somebody has to maintain it. Somebody, these workflows, like Katherine is saying, like the very first time you build them, they are not going to be perfect. You literally have to use them and figure out what works and what doesn't work and be okay amending them forever.
Yep. And then the last other thing, and I feel like this might be something that you can kind of relate to, and this is coming back to that whole keep it simple. Don't make them lengthy. I'll see it all the time where it's like 52 steps. You are not going to get anyone to buy in that if they see that there's 52 steps in the workflow. I can tell you that right now. Like a perfect example, I'll even say on this one, when a client passes away, we may end up having to do a Benny change as well, account transfers and closures. Do I put all of those steps in this particular workflow? Absolutely not. There's a step in there to say, hey, if applicable, launch these other processes that are also going to have their own timeline associated with it. So at the end of the day, you have to be realistic about what you can even sell to your team and make sure you could sell it to yourself. If you saw a 52-step workflow, would you want to work through it? Probably not.
Sounds daunting.
So make sure you, again, keep it realistic, keep it simple. And again, like I said, test it. You never know what's going to work until you really get through it. And then you will get to a point where it's like, this is it. This is it. We finally got here. And that's when that buy-in really does kind of just solidify.
So Paul asked a good question here, Katherine.
Yeah.
How many activity, workflow, automation templates do you have? How do you organize them so people can find them? How can you organize them so people can find the one they need and remember what they mean? I love this question. It's a loaded question. I think first, Paul, on our last slide today, we'll have our contact information. Oh, actually, Katherine, you want to show him on our website where he can download our list of workflows, activities, and automation templates?
Yeah, let me pull it open here.
I think that might be helpful because, Paul, you can literally download all of our recommendations and then just adapt them to your business. And then how do you store them, or like how do people find them, Katherine? I think we should show them where these things live in Redtail. And then how do you teach everybody what they mean so people remember what they mean? We can show them a style guide. So on our website under resources, you can go to our free downloads and there's everything that you need there. So that's available to everybody to download. And again, like these are just baseline. You obviously have to adapt them to the way, you know, your business functions, but at least this is a little baseline for you. And then if you want to jump into the database, KB, we can show him when you go to like add an activity, when you go to add an activity, you have a drop down here and you can see all of your activity templates. And we've put a star there to indicate an activity that's linked by automation that's going to fire off a workflow. Okay, so when you've created an activity template, they're all going to show up here under the drop down box. Same thing with the workflow. If you go back to the quick add button or the create button, and you go to workflows, the team is going to have access to your list of workflows. So if you're not using an automation and you launch workflows manually, your team would just go here, select, you know, review meeting or whatever it is, and it's going to launch that workflow. If you're building workflows and automations, they live under your name in the top right corner. And I want to caution people, if you click on your name, top right corner, and you go to manage your account, we always make the recommendation that changes to the back end of the database get funneled through a single person on your team. That you have a Redtail champion on your team, and that person is responsible for maintaining all of these templates that you see in this manage template section. Because if you've got 10 users and everybody's, you know, messing with the templates, it's a too many cooks in the kitchen situation. Nobody has any control over the database. So if I can make a recommendation to you, if you're trying to build out activity templates, automations, email, whatever, you know, have one person take ownership of this and be the true Redtail champion on your team, and the person that facilitates all changes so that they have some control over the database. So that's where your templates live if you'd like to build them out. All right, let's go back to the slides and let's finish workflows, then we can get to the rest of these questions.
And then can I say actually one more thing on that one just to help?
Yeah, please.
Not limited to workflows. I'm actually going to say it's pretty much any templates, and I'd even lump in documents outside of Redtail. Come up with a naming convention. If you just were to go willy-nilly all up in here and you have like workflow templates and activity templates, it's going to scatter it in by alphabetical. We group our opportunity ones that are together. So like our prospecting, those all get numbered, and number goes at the top of the list. If you have a bunch of, I'll even say categories here, a bunch of categories that happen to deal with estate planning, put estate planning : and then whatever it applies for. If you deal with taxes : and things like that. So keep it like that where it's really easy to find. So you're not spending forever and a day searching in your templates, in your list, anything like that. You know where it falls. That's what's going to help when you do have a lengthier list, because we have quite a bit of workflows, quite a bit of activities, and that should be normal. You should have a healthy list because you do a lot every single day, 5 days a week minimum, and this is where it's going to help out. So that's my last little tidbit. Naming convention is your best friend. All right, but coming on back. So we've got the client management. I didn't make it to it here, but one last little workflow list. Not only thinking about the client or prospect facing, think about your internal processes as well. So think about like your review processes, maintaining your database. I'm even going to throw in there, if you're expanding, which is a great thing, new hires. We go through it ourselves. We sit there and go, oh, we should have a process for this. If it's something you're going to do frequently, or at least something that you want to keep consistently, this is where workflows again are going to come in.
Yep, exactly. Paul asked another question here. What if your project champion is on vacation, sick, leaves, or he says get hit by a bus? I say hit the Powerball lotto. Can we just show a style guide really quick? Am I putting too much pressure on you to pull one up? Okay, I'll just answer it because you can download, Paul, our style guide from our website. This acts as like the glossary to your database. All right, so this explains what are your statuses, your categories, your keywords, your user-defined fields, your tag groups, what are your activity types and categories. You can literally like outline your entire database onto a style guide so that the entire team can see how the database functions. And in the case that someone leaves, you know, your Redtail champion leaves, you still have a resource to be able to cross-train on. I think it's important that everybody is dangerous in Redtail. I think it's important that everybody understands the functionality, but I caution you to having everybody making changes because it just gets wildly out of control and then you spend an astronomical amount of time maintaining the system. So
Yeah, so there is
that's
like
my
a final version, but my 2 cents, this is again the one time everyone with me knows that Excel's not my first choice to do anything, but when you're trying to set standards, figure out what you've got in your database that you want to keep, what you want to get rid of, you do need to have like a list to work with. So I would have like a working style guide initially that boils down to the status and categories, your keywords and tag groups, user defined fields. We haven't even hit that conversation, but user defined fields, opportunities, all of those things that you have basically, let me come over here. Whoops, wrong thing. Anything that you have as a managed database list, start to consider cleaning that up. And a style guide's your best friend when it comes to figuring out, like I said, what should stay, what should go. You can work off of a document from it. So I'll give kind of like a little teaser one. But again, I would work off of the one we have on our website. But just to kind of put it into perspective of what can kind of happen here is you establish what you want, but you figure out what's in your database to clean it up. So again, it's going to take time. I'm not going to say you got 10 minutes, you're going to be all in tip top shape. No, this is something that you're going to think about, figure out what you, again, really want to going forward. And then that is your standard. So again, that's a long-winded way to say, take the time to set up the foundation. Like we said, all the way at the beginning of this webinar, the C of your CRM is your contacts, and that's really where it all starts. Everything else from there is those added on features that give you that history. You build it there, everything else naturally becomes more efficient. There's one more thing, and I swear, Melissa, I wasn't ignoring you, and this is the last thing I could do for workflows. She had asked a question about account opening workflows for different custodians. There's different steps. Should we use separate workflows for each or utilize outcomes to include them in one? I love this question because I feel like we keep getting this one. And this is going to boil down to, again, what's going to make the most sense. If they are two very different processes, or 3, 4, however it is, I'm not afraid to have more workflows because you're using it based off of the processes for it. If it's only like 1 or 2 things that are different, it makes more sense to just have an outcome and just do like, if this is applicable, go here. So if, again, you're sitting there drafting it up and you're like, these are nowhere near each other, I would say just have different workflows.
Totally. Lindsay asked if we can run through a workflow. Let's use the Benny change activity template to fire off the Benny change workflow for Maggie. And we can like run them through it. So let's use my example. I had this meeting with Maggie. As a result of the conversation, I need to update a Benny. So Katherine used the activity template for Benny change. It pre-filled the subject. She's got the date in. We set the priority based on, our priority legend, when this needs to be done. She's going to open this guy up. Me as the advisor, Katherine has built this template based on her role as the client service person, so that me as the advisor, I'm prompted to fill out everything that she needs in the description box here to eliminate unnecessary back and forth communication between the two of us around, like, Katherine saying, hey, Kate, I need to know what's the reason for the change? Who's the current Benny? What account are we talking about? Things that you had previously emailed or DM'd or shouted down the hall now all live in this template. Okay. In the notes section, I'm going to do my dump. I'm going to say, hey, had this meeting with Maggie as a result of the conversation. We discussed changing her Benny on her IRA, blah, 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 blah. Okay. I save the activity. I task it off to Katherine. Perfect. And the reason that this is so important, you guys, is now all of the communication as it relates to this activity lives in one single place. Okay, I'm not having to go to her notes page to see the conversation. I'm not having to go back to the task to see what's happening internally. Everything is consolidated in one place. So now she can assign the activity, or I'm going to assign the activity off to KB. I guess Katherine's not in this database. So let's say Courtney on my team is the admin person. Let's save it. And you can see here up at the top that it is linked to an automation. So by saving this, if all things operate as they should, we go back to Maggie's contact record. What do you know? We got to change a Benny. And if you scroll down, you can see the Benny change workflow. So if you open this guy up, Catherine, let's just run through it and just high level show her. You can see the steps, which are those gray bars. Make sure you have all the information. Okay. Make sure that you prepare the paperwork. So you can complete this one. And if Redtail's nice to us, it'll let us move quickly here. Information's collected. We've prepared the paperwork. Make sure that the notes are in Redtail. Prepare the paperwork for signature. There you got your email template in there that says, hey, client, here's the Benny change paperwork. Please review and sign a date of your convenience. We send that paperwork out. Okay, it's not good enough to just send the paperwork out. We got to be their accountability buddy here and make sure we got it back, right? So we're going to confirm if the paperwork signed and returned. Here's a perfect example of an outcome. Melissa's asking about whether we're using outcomes or multiple workflows to manage accounts. An outcome lets you come to the fork in the road. Okay, was it returned? Was it not returned? If it wasn't returned, we need to follow up. If it was returned, we can keep going.
Yeah, we did.
So for this example, we're just going to keep rolling.
Because I also want to show what happens when we don't go to a step.
Exactly. So now that we've got the paperwork back, here's our reminder to save it to the server, submit it to the custodian, okay? And then, as we know, we got to double check the custodian's work, make sure that they didn't fat finger something or like botch somebody's name. I like to double check and make sure that, everything looks good before the client gets the confirmation. So I've done that. I've completed that. And now I believe that excellent customer service is proactive. So I want to proactively confirm with the client using an email template there that says, hey, we've done what we said we were going to do. Here's the accounts that we've updated. You're going to be getting confirmation from Schwab, whatever. Okay. But we standardize the communication utilizing email templates within the workflow to work smarter and not harder.
In a perfect scenario, it should literally run, you have the meeting, activity template for this Benny change. You put in your notes, ideally a note template that can keep all of what we talked about, saves it over here. This launches the workflow, email templates for all of these correspondence. It really is like a boom, 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 boom. If you have all of your ducks in a row, I'm gonna hit that complete step finally for you.
And then it gives you a nice little overview, right? It gives you a nice little overview of what was done. And then what wasn't done was skipped by an outcome. So we didn't have to follow up to receive paperwork. It literally just bypassed that step. And now I'm going to go back to Maggie's contact record and I'm going to complete that task. That's going to, or that activity that's going to timestamp, save it to her contact record. And now I have a historical timeline of everything that I've done for this gal, over the course of our relationship. And if someone ever asked me, hey, Kate, did you send the paperwork? Hey, Kate, did you do whatever I asked you to do? I can see in the workflow the checklist of everything that I did to keep myself on track.
Now,
all right,
couple little asterisks for ourselves. Normally, you are not going to floor through it this fast. I should stress that. But a couple things.
Takes a couple days.
Yeah, it takes a couple days. A couple of things that I feel like does trip people up, and this might also have been something that Tim, you were facing. This to me sometimes is kind of like an estimate date. So like if we follow up on it and we confirm it and you complete this early or you complete it late, ultimately it's going to keep track of when you actually complete it. So I know I've had people like panicking. They're like, oh my God, it's the next day. And I'm like, are you still going to do it? They're like, yeah. I'm like, perfect. Leave it open. You're going to complete it when it's actually supposed to be completed. So just a couple of things to stress there, but yeah, normally I will tell you, this is a far longer process. We just wanted to show it really quickly.
And I like that you brought that up because workflows are going to sit on your workflow page until you work through them. So like they're kind of your placeholder to make sure that you don't forget to do something. So if you go to your workflow page for a second, Catherine, you can see they're there in chronological order.
We're talking about
this one?
Yeah,
your personal workflow page. Yeah, you can see they're there in chronological order. So Catherine should be working through the top one first, all the way down to the bottom. But you could jump ahead or you could go back because these are literally here as a placeholder. They're not going to go anywhere until she like executes them, which I think causes confusion. In In the one-off that you had to change the target date, let's say you sent the paperwork out and the client says, hey, I'm in London for 2 weeks, you could change the target date of that workflow and push it out 2 weeks so it doesn't look like you are negligent. You could literally change the target date and push it out 2 weeks until they're back from London.
And then just to clarify really fast, the target date's going to have like a ripple effect across the whole board. So
Yes.
I'll do that here really quick just so you guys can see it. So that one, see if it lets me. We got 8/7, 8/14s in there. I'm going to push it back literally 2 weeks, update that workflow. And again, it does it across the board. If you're just editing one, you technically can do that in the step itself. I don't usually recommend this because it's going to still be off for the rest of it anyway. So you're better off just updating the target date. Ooh.
Okay, as you work through the workflow, is the team member entering the notes in the linked activity? Yes.
Yep.
There's not a great place to log notes in a workflow. So the activity is like your centralized place for managing the action item. The workflow is just the checklist, making sure you don't forget anything. So if you have correspondence with the client over the process, like over, the course of a couple of weeks while you're executing the transition or whatever, the transfer, all of your link notes are going to go in that activity, and you'll see a chronological timeline of everything that you've done as it relates to that activity, but it needs to live in the activity. Your workflow is just a checklist.
Couple things here too, and I know we said it, I'm gonna double down, so I apologize. I know I'm gonna sound like broken record. I'm going to stress having this, not this page, one off of it. Have the workflow task open as the page. I see it all the time where people only look here, and this is only for today, unless you do this little bad boy, which I can talk about in a second. But this should be open as you work throughout your day. It is something we do because, again, you might come in and only have 2 things, and then by 1 o'clock in the afternoon, there's now 56 things. And again, that's just because you're going through those different processes. If you have not seen this, workflow tasks that did not have due dates previously now can show down here. I am not encouraging this to say do not have due dates, but it is something that could help if anyone is like that obstinate on your team, that it could help with it. But again, I would encourage have this task. And then one other kind of shameless plug that I would encourage more so for either if you're more of like the operations like manager, or even to incorporate it for staff meetings, pull the workflow task report. This is something, and not to necessarily like call out people on your team, but if you're seeing the same bad habits, it's one person or 2 people that are causing all of these backlogs, that is something that we want to address. And this list gives you could filter it by specific users or just give everyone. And now that's something that you could talk about and be like, well, why is this not completed? If it's a legit reason, like, oh, they're out of town because, again, they're over in London for 2 weeks, that's fair. But if it's just, oh, I forgot, no, those I forgots need to stop. And that's where this could really just help put that kind of pressure on it to make sure it becomes a good habit to look at your workflows. So I'll get off my tangent, but it'll help.
I like workflows as an accountability tool, and it's something that we do like every Monday morning in our team meetings. We just look at the open workflows, see if there's any bottlenecks, address the bottlenecks, keep people accountable. And for me, when I was first learning to use workflows, it wasn't second nature to me. I loved my today page for tasks. I had to set myself a reminder in Outlook to ping me in the morning, midday, and afternoon to check my workflows until it became second nature, because I was that person that created the bottlenecks. So if you're trying to adopt workflows and you're finding that you or someone else on your team is creating bottlenecks, just set yourself a push notification to check your workflows.
And over time, it will become second nature where then you won't have to do that anymore. That's the good news. There's always progress. Okay, I think we've got a couple more minutes here, a couple more questions. Okay, you're answering this one. This one's actually a little bit off of workflows. Let's see if I can kind of tackle it. This one's from Laura. How can I track progress of putting on a seminar? A workflow will tell me what to do, but how can I track the back and forth progress of organizing the seminar, i.e. finding and contacting and working through the logistics of having a speaker at the seminar? This is kind of a loaded question, so I'll kind of give like a couple tips throughout the whole thing. One, quite literally, if you're not using seminars, I would. I'm assuming you are, but I would be safe and actually use this in here. Seminars is your event tracking tool. So it could be anything from a dinner to if you send out books, if it's a holiday party, doesn't matter what it is. If it is something that you are planning down the road to do, that is a seminar. Now, seminars in themselves, the details are basic at the beginning. It's, when it's taking place, where, what time, all that good stuff is at the top. The hidden gems of this particular section is actually towards the bottom. One, you are not limited to one workflow within a seminar. So you could have a workflow that does the whole process. You could have another workflow that goes through just, signing on entertainment or establishing the vendor. And that's like a whole process in its app. You can have mini workflows for just those ones, and you can link every single one of those right here. So again, you're not limited to one. The other are the notes and documents section. If I were to ask anyone who's actually using seminars, I get usually I'd say 9 out of 10 times, no one scrolls this far down. Notes is strictly the internal tracking for everything you've done for just the seminar. It's not linked to a contact. It's not linked to your own business record. You could, but this is where you can really come in here and go, hey, had a correspondence with this, waiting on that. You have just as much of a right to use the notes section here like you would approach with the client. So don't be afraid to use the notes section. Documents, if you are having it somewhere where you did have to sign some sort of agreement to, yes, they're going to host it here, store it here. So it's the one time I'm going to say documents here is going to be valuable. Because again, should you go out, should you win the lottery, you get hit by a bus. I hate saying that one, but again, it could happen. Someone else could come in here and see everything you've done by the notes, the documents, and the workflows that you have attached to it. The one little caveat is there is no way to link activities. So if it is something where it's like a phone call or anything like that, I would at least link it back to your own business record, especially if it's something you're doing internally. Your business record is going to act just like a contact where I've lost, oh, there we go, where everything you have could be a notes, could be activities. You're seeing that same kind of streamline of activities all in one spot still. So use what you have here. And then when that fails you, use your own business record to capture everything else that you have done. So that's the one little wrap up. I'll go really fast for seminars. If you have more questions, obviously don't be shy, but I believe we
worked through all the questions. Good job, you guys. This was really great. I appreciate all of the questions you guys have. They were fantastic. Katherine, if you want to show our contact slide, I know there were a couple people that had some follow-up questions. I included in the chat or in the Q&A our email address. If you have specific questions, I know Paul had questions on cleanup. We can help, walk you through that process. Email us. Katherine had mentioned our free community of RIA owners and operators. Join that. That's a great way to stay in touch, collaborate with us. We have monthly calls. There are other people just like you in that community trying to solve the same problems. So that's really cool. And then if you want to talk to me about the intricacies of your business, I'd love to chat. So there's a couple different ways to contact us and keep in touch. And I think, these have been really wonderful conversations. I think we just keep doing them. So every, couple of months, we'll have another open Q&A forum. We'll send you the follow-ups, all the resources that we talked about today. Katherine, you're an angel. Thank you for being so technologically, just being so well-versed in the system. I think this is just so valuable to share your insights with the community and everybody that was on today's call. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you guys. So just expect again that follow-up from us pretty shortly here, recording all of that good stuff. And then again, those free resources were on our website as well. So simplicityops.com, you can find those, download those, use them to your advantage. We're always happy to help.
Wonderful. Thanks, guys. We'll see ya.